Good morning and good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching this later, and thank you so much for everyone attending. I would like to welcome Francis Chouquet. Francis is
Hello.
hi, is a super talented lettering artist and type designer. We have the pleasure of working with Francis for quite a while now at I Love Typography because he is one of the foundries that we distribute. We love the typefaces that he designs, and it's not just us. Francis was also featured in Steve Heller's Font of the Month because of the amazing creative work that he does. And this is why we invited also Francis to the workshop on how to go from lettering work into type design to make that jump. How do you go through that process? So we have that workshop. It's happening on November 2 and 3. But before that workshop, as a little teaser and as a way to share Francis's work with as many people as possible, today is a little bit of a preview of Francis's work, how he goes about creating his typefaces, and how he approaches lettering work in general. So thank you so much, Francis, for taking the time to give the workshop and to be here
Thank you for the
today.
invitation.
It's really nice to have you with us. We're really excited about this talk. And yeah, I will just log out, not log out, I'm staying. I'm going to put myself on mute and no video. And when we're done with the talk part, we come back and there will be opportunities for people to ask questions. So thank you so much and welcome. And yeah, looking forward.
Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for being here. So as Nadine said, I had the opportunity to share with you my work and how I work between lettering and fonts, and how I use lettering to build fonts my way, which is maybe a bit different from the traditional way, but it's not so far away. Actually, it's pretty similar, but for me, it's a good opportunity to share how I work and also why I work that way. So today, so for those who don't know me, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so where is my?
It's the green button at the bottom of
Safari,
the screen.
it's okay. I found it. Okay, so here. Okay, this is not my work, but this is the work I want to share with you. So I go back on the top. So just to show you a bit of my work for those who don't know. So I'm more known for Francis, which is really bad. We say jeu de mots in French. It's Francis in French, but it's Francis in English, so it doesn't work anymore. So I am a lettering artist, so I work a lot using shapes and some old, I would say mid-modern century style from the 60s, 70s, 50s. My main influence at the beginning was the graphic designer Solbass, and then Paul Rand, and guys like Alex Steinweiss or Jim Flora, who were famous in the 50s, 60s for their titles or credits in the movies, but also people like Alex Steinweiss was the first guy who did illustrative covers for music albums. So their style were really important for me. So at the beginning, I didn't try to relate with the typographic side on what they did, but the whole style was really interesting for me because it was a bit working with shapes, colors. It had a screen printing environment and style. So I started to work to work on letters, especially playing with shapes. So it's really interesting because I didn't start first doing lettering from the 60s, I started to do a font which called Farandole, which I'm going to show you a little bit later. But it was a kind of game between shapes and the overlaps. Like you can see it, for example, here in that lettering style. So this is what I like to do the most, and this works pretty well with small old style. You see like that, which maybe reminds you of Solbas. And so I do mostly, all of my work is mostly with overlaps or old style look. I think you can see some old style from the 60s, 50s, and all that stuff. So I really like that kind of letters, and that's how. So I started playing with these, and at some point I decided, I'd like to try to do a font where people could choose their colors and could make the font. I mean, for example, the R here is orange and purple. So maybe they could do some purple and orange and put them on top of each other and try to make a font out of it. And I must admit, it was not the easiest way I found out to start into type design, because I wanted to do a color font, and I wanted to do, and because of the different layers, it was a layered font. So it was a bit difficult, I would say, but a fantastic project. And I'm going to share with you some slides I made with that. Let me show you here it is. I hope you see it. So this is the first font I made, which is called Farandole. And as you can see here, you have shapes. So the shapes make the letters. And here I went a bit far, because I disconnected each letter into segments, into components. So people can choose a color for one component and another color for another component. And also on top of it, I did design some illustration. You can add or not, and then it make it possible to choose all the colors you want for each letters. But the idea was really interesting. But at the end, the problem is it makes it really difficult to create, because you have to work for components with components. And when you create the font, it makes it difficult. And when you implement it in the softwares, each component is one font file. So it means you have to create different layers for each component. So it's a bit tricky, but at the end, it's really interesting, because you can play with them and you can do many different colors, many different styles, and it took me a long time to create that font, but at the end, it was really worth it, because I learned a lot. And to do that font, I studied on the iPad, because I come from the lettering side. So the lettering is drawing letters. So what I did, especially for Farandole, but also for Scusi and Lustig, which are also my fonts I show you later on, I drew them. I didn't use the vectorization on Glyph or other software. I drew them on the iPad in Procreate, and then I moved all the shapes to Illustrator to do a classic vectorization, and then I copy and paste all the shapes into Glyph. And in Glyph, I resized everything. I did put everything on top of each other to create each letters. But but that's fun. And I'm going to show you also why it's fun to use these fonts, because it looks like lettering, to be honest. It doesn't look like a font. It really looks hand-drawn. So it's really interesting to use it in different kind of work. So let me show you different size slides I did for Farandole, for example. So here you have the lowercase alphabet. Here you have a use, you see the mid-modern century use in this pattern, and you have some letters. So what is really interesting with Farandole is I did many versions. So you have the closed shapes, and you have, I think I have it somewhere. Maybe not here, but also you can have open shapes, like something open in all the letters, like the O or other letters. And it's what I really like with Farandole is I drew it my own way. And when I started to sell it, I had to find ways to use it. And that's where I realized I could use it in many more cases than what I thought. So here, for example, it's an illustration for a festival, a music festival. And you can read the Fiesta Agosta name, but also with all the illustration, it works pretty well together, same color panel. I mean, it's the same colors and the same kind of shape. So it all goes together, but the letters go really well inside the whole poster. So it's really interesting, and I really like it. And I did also another one. Here it's kind of poster for a fictive jazz festival. And here you see on the right the typical style of illustration I like, with the piano and overlaps, and it really has the screen printing style. And on the left you have the title, Jazz for Life, and I use Farandole here, and it goes perfectly well with the illustration style. So I was really happy. So when I designed the font, I didn't think about its use, but when you draw the illustration and you can use your own font with the style of illustration you like, that's where all is the melting all together works pretty well. So I was really happy with that. And then I had another idea. I wanted to draw another kind of font that would work the same way, so with layers and overlaps. And that's where I did create Lustig. So Lustig means funny in Germany, but I did change the letters, so it's my own way to say funny, but with different letters. So it's called Lustig, and Lustig is also really experimental, but also hand-drawn. And it has something really interesting, is it all starts with a shape, a square shape, and using negative space, we are going to create the letters. So here, for example, you see we have 6 letters. They all have a square shape on the back. And on the front, we have small shapes everywhere that makes the letter appears. So it's something I really wanted to play with. And this one was easier to make than Farandole because it's only uppercase, and there are really few special characters like punctuation or stuff like that. And also, but here what I really like is, for example, when you look at that slide, you see the L and the U and the S, all the letters. You see that the first one, the square background, the square shape at the back is red, and the second one is blue or purple, and the third one is red. So you can do alternatives on the colors, and on the top you have, for the shapes on the top, you can mix them differently too. So it's really fun to use, even if you don't use it for professional project. It's totally fun to use. And what I really like with Lustig is you can use it without anything. It's a whole illustration at itself. It could be an illustration. So here, for example, you can mix different colors, and also if you look at here, you can change. I mean, every color on the back with every color in the front can make a really impressive palette. It's really interesting. So this one, I did the same process. I did do the shapes in Procreate, upload to Illustrator for vectorization, and then move it to Glyph. And in Glyph, I did all the process, the type design process. Then I will go on other fonts, which maybe are not handmade, all of them, but also interesting. But I will try to go a bit faster. Otherwise, I will spend the whole hour talking about the fonts that already exist. So this one is Quattro. So again, it was experimental at the beginning because I said, okay, I go ahead, I start with a square shape. And I'm going to cut inside the shape to let the letters appear. So here you, except for the I that I did smaller because otherwise it didn't work with the whole system. All the other letters are just squares with cuts into it. Okay, and what I really like about it is the kind of psychedelic effect it has, and but also it looks like a 70s funky font. So I did some visuals to help people to see how they could use it, because my fonts are so experimental that sometimes it's not easy for people to see how they could use it. So I did some visual in June to try to help people. And what was really interesting, so I used artificial intelligence to create some visuals, and I did integrate the type, the fonts into it. And I realized it's also really interesting to integrate that kind of visual in with that kind of font. So it's really interesting. But the most interesting fact here I really learned is to go full psychedelic. So here I use my font and I did distortion, and I went in all different kind of way to create a lettering with my own font. And I realized it had something from Grateful Dead inside, and maybe here you don't see the shapes anymore. So it might be sometimes a bit difficult to read, but it was really fun really fun to create a visual with your own font without knowing where you go. It's something I really like to do. And the last two fonts I will talk about today are from the Scusi family. So Scusi means sorry in Italian, and I wanted to have an Italian name for this family because I was really inspired by Italian movie. How do you say that? I talk about Sandro Simeoni. He was a graphic designer who was really famous to do movie posters in the 70s in Italy. And I didn't know him. And I saw the Italian calligrapher and lettering artist, Luca Barcelona, did a workshop in Milano where the workshop was lettering the cinema. So it was the lettering from the movies. And he did talk a lot about Sandro Simeoni, and the whole workshop was to try to use parallel pens. So it's calligraphic. I don't think I have one here, otherwise I could show you. It's a typical cut edge calligraphic pen. And the whole workshop was about to create that kind of style using the calligraphic pen. And I said, wow, I love that style. I want to know more about that guy, the Sandro Simeoni. And I did check online, and I made a whole board on Pinterest with all his work. And I started to do some lettering with him. And after some time, I said, well, I could do a font out of it. So what I did, I think it's the first font I did create using FontSelf. So FontSelf is a plugin on Illustrator to create fonts, but also now an app on the iPad to draw your fonts when it's hand-drawn fonts. So I did start to use the app to do the sketches of Scusi. So instead of using pencil and paper, I used the FontSelf app on the iPad to do all the sketching. And so I started to do the sketches, and the app is also really interesting because they have an algorithm that does all the spacing and kerning for you. So when you draw things like that, so this is Scusi, regular. So I did draw all these letters, and their FontSelf is pretty good to do the spacing and kerning because it's really simple here. So I didn't have to do it right now. So I could see really quickly how the letters did work together. And so I could create really easily the alphabet. So then I moved it to glyph, as I will show you after, for the whole process. That's something we will do in the workshop. So the thing is, I did draw all the letters and move them to glyph, so I could modify a bit the spacing. I could also clean the lines because the FontSelf app tend to do like Illustrator. It does put points everywhere on the lines. So I didn't want to have that. So I go to glyph and I clean all the lines. So you have less points and it's more workable and modifiable. So I did Scusi, and also what was really interesting is also I could use my illustration style with my own fonts. That's something now. I mean, you see where I go. I mean, it's my fonts, my own style, which is really specific from me. They are pretty illustrative fonts, but they are in my own style. So they work perfectly well with my illustration or lettering. And it's always interesting to see how other people are going to use my own style in their own projects. So it's really funny. So here again, I use some artificial intelligence to create an old 60s, 70s with Scusi on top, and it did work perfectly well. And at some point, I don't know how it happened, but I was in Glyph, and I said I could do a version of Scusi with only angles, so no soft curves everywhere. So no more hand-drawn font. It would be fully with angles. So I took all the letters from Scusi. I did put them on the background, and on the top, I did put points everywhere and did create that way Scusi Bruto. So it's a Bruto version of Scusi. And so here you can see it. I use it also again in an old retro mid-modern century style. And it's really interesting because, I mean, for you it might be similar, but for me it's totally different because here you see the angles, the vectors. It's more cleaner, and I used it in another visual like this one, and it has its own um, style, his own personality. But it's really interesting to see how it works together. For me, it's really vibrant, and it works again perfectly well with all these retro styles. So I was really happy to use it that way. And working again with artificial intelligence, which I found really interesting when you want to try to implement your work into something a visual for people to know how to use the fonts. So here again, another sci-fi old style with the Scusi, which works Scusi Bruto. And on the right, I try to see, I'm a really fan of Pixar and Disney movies, not always for the stories, but always for the type, especially for the old ones. But Pixar try to keep a good vibes in the titles of their movies, and also when you wait until the credits at the end, they most of the time they use really nice fonts. Maybe they create them, maybe they buy them, it depends. But they mix something a bit experimental with something more traditional at the end. It works always perfectly well. And I always had in my mind the dream that someday maybe Pixar could use one of my fonts. It didn't happen yet, but we never know. And I decided to create a strange character here, uh, fluffy blue one, and I call it Woofy. And I used Scusi Bruto in a really different environment that I thought about when I created the font, because for me it was really retro style. So here it's really modern, 3D and everything. And I really like how the two works together. So I was really happy with that. So now I'm going to share with you the process, my process I use when I do a lettering. I use a lettering to create a font. And what happens is that I did started one earlier this year, and using a lettering I found on Instagram. So I'm going to show you where I found the inspiration, where I go from it to create the alphabet, and what's the organization and the process to create the whole font. Okay, and if you participate to the workshop in November, the goal will be to find a lettering you like in order to create a font with it. So today I'm going to show you how I do things and how you will do things when if you attend the workshop. So the first thing is we go back on Instagram. So let me show you where to go back. So I come back here and I'm going to share. Yeah, I go back on Instagram. So here is an account on Instagram. It's called Magazine Lettering. It's a fantastic inspiration with only old style lettering. So for me, this is where everything starts and magic happens, because that's where I find my best ideas if I want to create a font. And I think I will never get tired of seeing that account, especially because the guy who has it did update it really regularly. So you have always new ideas. So there are more ideas than you have time to create fonts out of them. But here is this account. So again, it's always in the same retro style, mostly from the 60s. And you have movies, or even you have some Mars Attacks, which is more recent, but also in an old style. And here you can spend the whole day looking at all this lettering stuff and see, wow, there's some are really good, some are less good, but some are really, really good. And for me, creating fonts, I always wonder how I could make a font out of something like a lettering. So here I'm going to choose one just for now to see to show you how it works and how the letters works and how it could be useful in a font. For example, let's take this one, just a simple one. Maybe it's not the best example because it's really you have a lot of texture and everything, but you can use a lettering without the texture. You can change it the way you want. So here, for example, we have nice letters. It seems a little bit reverse contrasted, so it means that the edge are thicker on the top and the bottom than on the sides. So you can start with that idea. So looking at the inspiration, you start already to do a kind of inspection of the lettering. You try to see what works, what doesn't work, what you want to recreate in your own font. So here, for example, you see so it has some kind of reverse contrast thing. Some letters are bigger than the others, which is something really usual in old lettering. And you also have some kind of ligature here, interlocking ligatures. It means that at the end, you will have to create one character, so one glyph in glyphs in the software, where you will have these two letters. It also means if you have some experience into interlocking and also in type design, it means that also you will have to create that glyph with the L and the O. You will have to create it with several other letters. It means LA, LE, LI, LO, LU, maybe some consonants too. So it can be LB, LC. It depends on the work, the size of the project, but it can be really interesting to see how it works. So for me, I'm going to show you how I did start that. So I have it somewhere here. I did record one of them. So this is the one. So I did fall in love with this Vacaciones lettering. Why? Is because it's really condensed. So I love condensed type. Also because it's really dancing. And it works perfectly well with the kind of lettering I like. So if tomorrow I want to create some soul bass inspiration, lettering or illustration, I can use that kind of font really easily because it works perfectly well. So the first thing I did is I said, okay, I want to do a font out of it. So I had to study it again. So here it's really interesting, maybe more interesting than the first example, because here the first thing you have to do is to understand how the letters are made and how they work together. So for example, you can see that the V and the A, I mean, they work in the same kind of system. So you can design the A and the V pretty easily. And from the V and the A, you can maybe design the N, and you can design the W and other letters that will be similar in the construction than the V and the A. For the C, you see the C has a straight line. On the left, it goes back straight too. So the C is pretty easy. Here we have an E that is a capital, but we could also use the C to do a lowercase e, just to put some junction here. But here we have the similarity with the C and the S. So the S works also vertical and goes down using the same kind of shape. So it means that all letters that are similar to this kind of shapes, you are going to use the to create the same way. For example, the C, you can create the O. It will be exactly the same way. Also, the I is a vertical, but you see with the I and the N, for example, it's not straight. It goes, you have, it's not, to me, it's not really a serif, but it goes a bit wider at the top. So you see this everywhere, the V, the A, the C, so the I, the N, and so you realize that every letter you will create, you will have to recreate that style. So it means that you are going to use these letters first. You are going to create these letters first. Maybe you create them dancing. So for example, the N and the A, they have a lower leg here too. It's not the same. See, it's a lettering, so it's not the same A, but the N also, it's also dancing. So you will think about that when you create your letters. And so first thing you will recreate all the letters we have here, and then you are going to create the rest of the alphabet using the letters you have here. And when you create a regular font, a font in general, it works like the system. So you start with some shapes, and you are going to use some shapes to create the same families of the letters, like the M, the N. If you go with script, for example, I do a lot of script lettering. So I know that some letters like the A, the P, the Q, even the H, the N, they all use the same kind of shapes. So you can start with these letters you have here and create the other letters of the alphabet. And when you don't know, when you are not sure, you try and you see how doing words with them, you will see, you do some kind of proofing, and see if the letters that are too far away from what you think is your system, you try to create them and see if it works or not. So now I'm going to show you the rest of the process. So I took this lettering, and then I did move to the iPad on FontSelf, because that's where I did draw all my letters. So now I'm going to show you. So I stop, I go back. Yeah, here. So here is my iPad. So I turn it on, if I can. Okay. So here at the bottom, I have the FontSelf app. I turn the FontSelf up, and you see I have made all the letters like the lettering I just showed you. So I did draw the A, B, C, D, all the letters, and see sometimes the N I had it, but the M I had to create it. So what I did is I tried to use the same style of lines and put it a bit above here and below here. So you keep the same kind of style. So I did it for all the letters. And then when you create a letter here, when you draw it, it goes automatically here in that part of the screen, where FontSelf is going to do the spacing and kerning immediately, all by itself. So you can see if your letters work together. For example, here with that kind of classical sentence. So if I create a letter here, it will appear automatically here. So I see if it works with the other letters or not. So it's really interesting because it's sketching, but the other side, you already know if it's going to work or not. So you can fix it really quickly. And the FontSelf app doesn't have any ligature ligature yet. So for that example, I wanted to create a font only with uppercase. So I decided to use the lower cases to do some of my ligature I wanted to create, okay? And the idea behind it is that when I upload the file in Glyph, I will change the glyph, and I will transform the lowercase here into ligature. I will show you later. So here, for example, it's EJK so the L is here LE, so lowercase is LE. And when I move to glyph, I will change it and create an LE ligature. So here you can see the different letters together. I have also something really interesting. Oh, sorry, I have this on the screen. Oh, I have to close this. I don't know. Yeah. Okay. So here, if you can, they also have a type and showcase line, and for me it's good for proofing. So for example, I turn this on and I see if the letters they work together. So you can see here many things that don't go very well. It's just a work in progress. The font is not done yet, and I want to use it for the workshop so I can improve it while everybody is doing his own font. So from here already, I don't have to create a proof myself. FontSelf already has visuals you can use, and I use it to proof. For example, you see the V and the I, the spacing is not really good, and also maybe the V is too short on the right. So I will have to change it. So what I do is I try to do the max on FontSelf, and when I am done with everything on the FontSelf app, I do an upload, so you can export the font file as an OTF file, and then I go into Glyph. And now I'm going to show you how I work into Glyph. So it's still a work in progress, so it's not, let's see where my font is. It's here. Okay, I hope you see it. So here I did import the font, the OTF font in Glyph. And here I did two things already. The first thing is when you check a letter like that, I have to move. Okay, so the FontSelf app, as I told you, does a little bit the same than Illustrator, that all points, you have too many points everywhere. So it's not really optimized. So what I do personally, the first thing I do is I optimize my curves and my lines. So here, for example, on the A, you can see you have a lot fewer. So I only keep them for the curves, and otherwise they are only straight lines. And that's the first thing I know is I clean all the lines. And then you remember the lower cases I did use. So here I did create an interlock and a ligature using the two letters. It's not optimized yet with the curves and the points, but I did create it. So the lowercase doesn't exist anymore. It's a really LE ligature, and I did the same for RI, TO, and TT. Okay. But now it's where we go even further. It means that ligature, you have to code them so they can be used in the process, when you use them. So it's something we will see also in the workshop, is we do a little bit of open type. So it's also work in progress, so it's not optimized yet. But the thing is really interesting with a ligature is when you type LE, it's replaced by LE altogether, the glyph LE. And I did it for the four ligature I did create. So it means that if now I try to, for example, here I have it. If here I try to write R, you see the R, but if I write the I, it will replace automatically with the ligature. And it's something for me really important because we really want the fonts to stay in some sense like lettering. I mean, we don't want to people to realize that it's a font. So we will do some interlocks, some ligature, and also I don't do it here for that font, but maybe I can do it for other fonts. It's to create alternates. So it means that, for example, we have an E here, and I can tell, thanks to OpenType features, I can tell the software that if I have this E here, I want another E later in the same word. It means that I will create different E's a bit with a design a bit different, and they will mix all together if they will be replaced by another alternate of the same letter later in the word. So we never have the same E in the word. So it means that people cannot realize it's a font because I did design 3 or 4 kinds of E's. And I do that for projects, especially for cartoon designers. When they create text inside the bubbles, they don't want people to realize it's a font. So sometimes I ask them, or they create different kind of letters, so they different alternate alphabets, and I do code that, and then people can really make their own font. So at the end, it's a font, but it's hand-drawn. It has special alternates, so you cannot see that it's really a font, and it keeps also the vibrant style of the lettering, especially for retro style. So yeah, that's how I work. I still have to improve some things. I mean, inside it depends on the work I do on the font I work on. But yeah, it's really interesting to do it that way. So you choose your lettering, you sketch it. You can say sketch it on Procreate, go through Illustrator, and then come back to Glyph. But now what I do is I use the FontSelf app on the iPad. I will sketch all my letters. Sometimes I'm on the beach somewhere in vacation. I have an idea, or I see a nice lettering, and then I will try to create the font. It's not a first version, but it's a first sketch. And then I move the file all to Glyph. And then that's where I mix and I set up all I clean everything and I set up the font. So it's professionally organized and set up. And yeah, that's how everything works. And that's how we will work if you attend the workshop together beginning of November. Okay, so if you have any question, Nadine, let me know.
Yes.
And
So,
yes, I hope you learned something, and that was really, I hope useful at some point.
I mean, it's fascinating. I would like to attend the workshop. I was actually sitting here and thinking like, but I could attend the workshop and do Arabic letters. That would be fun for me. But yeah, no, this is fascinating. And it's always nice to see, behind the scenes, because often with typefaces, you get to see the finished product. You don't get to see how you got to that typeface and how do you even start. And for me, because I don't, let me put my video on. I can't draw by hand. So it's, I always find myself like lacking in creativity when it comes to these styles, because like I look at this and it's like, I'll never be able to do this. But I think the point is that for, those of you watching now or later, that it all has to start somewhere, right? And it starts with the love of the letter forms, right? You find something you love, you go through the process and you get better with time, right? Because like, by now you've been doing this for a while, but of course in the beginning, like it takes time to get to learn and all of that. But this is, absolutely. But I think this is for me that what stood out is the relationship between the lettering and the illustration style that you like. That this is because it was always for me, and I know we emailed before and I was asking you like, how do you pick the lettering styles? And it really makes sense, because at the end of the day, this is a project of personal sort of relationship, because you want to use the typefaces and it speaks to you, and this is why it comes out in the style that you find fascinating. So that for me was really, really cool. And the relationship between typography and illustration. Well, it's not typography in this. When you use the font, it's typography. So yes, but it's typography that looks like lettering. So it's a little bit of a trick.
Yeah,
But it's really
exactly.
nice to see
It's
the
really
harmony.
specific. So
Yeah, and it's really nice to see that harmony and the relationship between the forms and to come, add color into it. So it always feels very alive, and in a way that is inspiring. And even I, like you were speaking, and in my head I was drawing, because like it just makes you want to pick up something and just start doodling and doing these things. And so I'm really, really thankful that you came and you joined us, and I think it's going to be an
I'm really
amazing
happy.
opportunity.
And also what I really like, I mean, in my process is when I go on the iPad and I start doing letters, and on the top of the screen, I already see them playing together. You see, when you create a font and when you start to write words, it's something new for you. And here it's something, I see the lettering, I like the lettering, and I want the words that I'm going to type look the same than the lettering. So when it happens, it's a fantastic feeling.
It's an eureka moment, no? Like you want to run around and like, I did it. Yeah, and the nice thing is this is the nice, like, the rewarding part from jumping from making one lettering piece versus making a font that can work like lettering is that once you have the font, it's infinite what you can do with it, and it's almost instantaneous. You just have to type it out. So it's a really fun thing. We have two very quick questions. So from David Jones, he's asking, what's your favorite animated movie?
I would say, I don't know if it's a new, I mean, not an old one. I would say Monsters and Company, because I like the introduction. It's fantastic.
Monsters Inc.
It's all the doors, and also it's fantastic. I think the credits at the end and the introduction, the title at the beginning is fantastic. And if it's an old one, it's really more complicated. I would say the good old Disney's, like Aristocats or stuff, like with really strong people. There is a really nice documentary on Disney Plus about Oli, I don't remember the name of the other one. There were two designers. They used to create all the characters like Mowgli and the monkeys in Mowgli and all the stuff. It's fantastic. They did it all by hand. And I like the imperfection of these movies, of these animation movies. It's the hand-drawn style. It's fantastic.
Nice. We have a question just asking the name of the font app in iPad again. It's Font Self, right?
Font Self, yeah.
Font Self.
So it's free. It's free to try and to work on it. It's just you just have to pay when you export the font file. Otherwise, you can play with it for free. So it's
okay.
It's
so font and then self, like self, SELF.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. Okay. Answer. Excellent. And then we have a question from Valentina. I can see that the fonts create a very specific typography. Some seem to have a connection to places like Vacaciones, for example, which takes me back to the 1950s America. Regarding the relationship between typography and place, do you think fonts created based on the ideas of cities or countries like Ed's, Market, Harry, Montserrat have potential in the font market? Have you ever considered investing in something like that?
No. I never thought about that, but it could be something. It's difficult to to answer quickly. I think it's really. Oh, I like the idea. I think you have to. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sorry. It's really. For example, there are some specific type regarding to specific places. I see, we were talking about Barcelona, for example, or Mexico. It goes really with the culture, and there is also a type culture in these cities. So I think it would be really interesting to, if you remember the World Cup, football World Cup in Spain. It was the logo for España. I think it was 86, something like that. the España logo was typical from what we would think would be a Spanish font. I mean, or Spanish
Yeah.
identity. And I think, yeah, it could be related really easily to that kind of style. Yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that sometimes you will have typefaces that transcend the location, and sometimes they don't. And I think it also depends on the inherent qualities of those typefaces. You know, like for example, I mean, it's not lettering, but if you look at Gotham, Gotham was inspired by lettering and typography around New York, but then now the typeface is, you know, used everywhere, and you don't see that connection particularly to that place. But some typefaces are very much a product of because of the quirks in them. So it depends on the style as well, I guess.
And it's also a question you ask when you create them is, do you want them to be really specific to a style? For example, for me, the retro 60s, 70s style. Do you want people to use it specifically for that kind of work? Or do you want people to use the font for any kind of work? Because you want to sell your fonts. So sometimes being too specific or too experimental, just like I do, I mean, it can reduce drastically the possibilities outside of your style. But I'm not a professional type designer, so I have fun. I want to keep fun in creating my fonts. That's why I like the prompt, like, oh, you like that lettering, you like that style, okay, go create a font out of it. And if it happens to help people, it's fantastic. Otherwise, I mean, that's how I like to do them, because they are really specific. They stand out, I would say.
Yeah, and this is why I was saying, like, it comes through very quickly and very clearly, like the personal connection of the lettering that you choose and the typefaces that you design, because we often design for clients as well, or redesign for the usage, but yours is driven more from a personal view. So that's quite nice. We have a nice comment from Jordanis. I hope I said the name right. He says, "Hey Francis, amazing work, man, as always. Don't worry, I'm sure soon Pixar will drop you a message." Smiley.
Hopefully, you never know.
Crossing it. Yes, and then from Arunima, your fonts are very fun and quirky. How much was legibility important in your priority list while creating them?
So when I create them, I don't. I pay attention, but not too much. That's when the alphabet is finished, that I spend some time and I ask my friends around me, because for myself it's always legible, but for people outside sometimes it's too hard to read. So I try to adjust to keep the same style, but making them a little bit more legible. Sometimes it could be more legible, I think, but everything I try to make it a lot more legible, and I lost the why I was doing that font. So I try to find a good balance between the two.
Cool, good. And then from Johannes, what is your favorite use case of one of your typefaces?
I think that I think it's Lustig, because Lustig is always used by itself for people who use it. So it always has a nice message behind it. And I think that's the I don't have I have worked with a rock and roll Brazilian band with Lustig, and they did a whole cover with only the font, and it worked pretty well. The level that is also more difficult for these fonts is that they are color fonts, so people can mix the colors they want with it. There is I really like the work from Ulrike Rausch, a font designer from Germany. And when she did start to create color fonts, she decided what color palette. I mean, she decided on 4 or 5 different color palettes people could use with them. And when I did create Farandole at the beginning, it was purple and two different versions of blue. And afterwards, I did recreate it. So people can choose their all colors. And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work for me, but it's not my work anymore. I mean, it's people use it as they want, but I find it more, it's more risky as a designer when you sell color fonts, because people are going to use their all palettes, and sometimes you like them, sometimes you don't. So that's where it's, but for the Brazilian rock band, it was fantastic.
Good. So we have lots of questions. Let's try to wrap up in the next 5 minutes. But it's amazing,
Yeah.
people are interested and all of that. So so we have 4 questions remaining. So how do you know intuitively when a font or typeface design is completed? How long do they usually take you to troubleshoot and go back and forth with revisions?
Ooh, it's really different from one to the other. But so for example, when it's a hand-drawn font, I spend a lot less time on the curves, on the specific vectorization. So I like to keep a bit of imperfection. So yeah, but the overall has to be like a block. It has everything has to work together. But when you look at the lettering, sometimes you think that some lettering are not perfect, but that's what I like. And actually, I don't want people to see that my fonts are fonts. So if sometimes it's a bit different, or maybe you don't like one version of one letter or something, I mean, sometimes I like that it could be a bit imperfect, but yeah, sometimes I spend a lot of time because I want, all the black, the positive space and the negative space. I mean, it's all the basics of more traditional type design. I want to try to keep them as much as possible. So all the basics you learn in type design, I try to respect them as much as possible. So positive, contrast, spacing, all that stuff. I try to keep it as good as possible. So that's where I will spend most of the time. And it's complete. It's never completed. I mean, I would say with experience, I will always have something new to modify. But I try to leave them as they were because they were created at some point, and I don't like to come back and change things. I mean, I don't know if it's a good idea, but yeah, people just buy it as it is, and I don't want to give them an update later on with really modified letters. So I try to keep them as they were, as they are. How they are. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. There's also a question from John Smith. Who are your favorite illustrators and who are your favorite Instagram people to follow?
Okay, so illustrator, I would say my favorite illustrator is dead and not on Instagram. It's Jim Flora, so Flora. He was really famous in the 60s for his music album covers. It's really his work that moved me into I don't know how to explain, but a style where things are a bit stretched, or I don't know. You have to see his work. It's really fantastic. And now people to follow on Instagram right now, I think there is one. I don't have the names really well here, but Bran Kemp is a really good guy to follow. He's a really good illustrator. There is also one or two others. I can't remember. The best thing to know, if I can make a little bit advertising, I have my newsletter, and each week I talk about my inspiration. So if you go on my newsletter, you can see different people I share work every week. So, and all in my style. So it's the best thing to do.
Perfect. We have another question from Arunima. Is there a risk or fear of the lettering artist suing for plagiarism for taking the font inspiration? I would expect, because from the 60s, the copyright period has already elapsed, correct?
Yeah. So that's the first thing to really important. I mean, I worked on a logo, a font. I studied a font out of a logo. So it's a bit different. It's not lettering, it's a logo for a company. So the company disappeared, but I had to contact the new company to see if I could use the letters. Even if it was from the 60s, I did contact them. We have to be really careful. For all the lettering I showed you on the magazine lettering Instagram account, most of them we don't know who did create the lettering, because these people, I mean, they were not famous. They just work. I mean, if you look at Solba's work, most of his work was not designed by him. He had a team of people around him. But Solbas is really famous. Sometimes it's nothing more than a title in a magazine, and you will never know who did create that. So I think it's okay to reuse it. I think my point would be not to do exactly the same, but to do it your own way. So it's easier also for you to create the whole alphabet. And yeah, now it's 80 years ago, so it should not be any problem for the copyright.
Yeah, I mean, less than 80, but yes. Yeah, but I mean, in any case, if there is any doubt, 63. But if there is any doubt, one can always do the research and try to find. And then if there is, once you've done the research and made sure that there are no legal protections, or there's no one to ask, even then I guess it would be in, but if there are any doubts, it's always good to ask. Like you said, you had to contact. So good. And then final question we take from John Smith again. If you can only recommend one book on learning to hand letter, what would it be?
I would say, so I have myself a book out, so you can check my book if you want. I think that the best to learn will be the one from Ken Barber. It's called Lettering Manual. It's because it's a really beautiful book, a fantastic book. Also, Ken Barber, I learned with them actually. I did a whole workshop of 1 week in New York with him. And he's also a big fan of 60s, 70s funky letters. So his book is fantastic. It's a really beautiful book, and he's the best to learn from, I think, for hand lettering. Perfect.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Francis. We took too much of your time today. Thank you for everyone who's still here. As a reminder, if you would like to take the workshop, it's November 2 and 3. I will send a recap with the link to this video, a link to the workshop, a link to Francis's newsletter, Francis's book, and anything else, Francis, you would like me to share, let me know, and we'll send this as a recap to everyone. In case they'd like to follow up and see what else to do. And so thank you, Francis, for being here with us today. And
my pleasure.
Thank you for everyone who, you're welcome. And thank you for everyone who joined, and we hope to see you again. This is all part of the series of talks that we are organizing at the I Love Typography Academy, because of all the courses that we give, all the workshops, and the whole thing is rooted in our love for the letters, for type, and we hope to see you in the future. So thank you again, Francis, and hope you have a nice evening. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.